How's it going, everyone? And welcome to what's going to be a relatively short edition of No Excuses on VTW Productions and YouTube.com. If you're wondering why we're starting early, Fern has to leave as soon as possible. So we're 30 minutes early to buy us some time to actually do the show. So,
Yeah.
with your favorite co hosts, Aristotle,
Arian.
And Volacel, who's just exhausted all of his luck for the week on the Gacha.
Yes. We got Jason.
That wasn't exactly what I meant, but it's still true. But,
Jason just ruins everything. It's what he does.
Yeah, if you would like to get involved with the show, you can do so by sending us an email at noexcusesvtw@gmail.com, or you can follow us on the Twitter at noexcusesvtw, or you can join us on Discord, which you can easily get to by clicking the link provided in the description underneath the archive version of the show on YouTube.
Yes, indeed. So yeah, this is going to be a very quick show, because everything's gone absolutely horribly wrong at my end of things this last week or so. Between tenants ruining a family rental house and, the coof. Yeah, it's been a fun week. Not over yet. So, on the stream
government's
today...
got to lock down again.
Lockdown again. No, Townsville's free now again, so that's going to at least get things... Brisbane, not so much. So, on the stream today, I'm playing a bit of City of Heroes, because I felt like it. It's been a little while since I've had a look at this, actually, and their retexturing project looks like it's nearly complete. Everything is very bright and shiny now. Like, it's all still the same old buildings, but now they don't look like, you're drunk when you look at them. Especially in the character creation now. It looks like they've gotten just about all the costume pieces retextured, so you don't have this weird mismatch of old and new textures anymore. Although, for some reason, they still haven't fixed the bug where Miss Liberty will very slowly get pushed off her pedestal. She's not supposed to move, and yet she still somehow slides off it over.
How does that?
She's the very first trainer character you start in front of.
Yeah, I know, but how does...
I don't know.
I thought that you couldn't move NPCs generally.
She's not supposed to move. She's supposed to be standing right in the middle of that square there, being, front and center for a brand new player. But no, she kind of just, over time, she'll just very slowly kind of slide off to the left there. Maybe, I don't know, maybe she gets hit, if she actually touches the ground, she gets to go home. I don't know. Yeah. So yeah, they're still going at it. It's been 2 years now, and they're actually having an anniversary event. They've even made an in-game badge in the style of the old school cryptic ones to go along with it, as well as made a new community area, which looks like some sort of interspatial arena thing. Actually, get to Pocket D. Where was Pocket D? Anyway, I'm not in the right levels with this character, so we're not going to look at that today. I will just do the big quest line that Cryptic introduced at level 5 sides, which I actually quite like. It's one of the last things I think they really added to the game was a major quest line that starts at level 5 and carries the entire progression of your character on both sides of the fence. And the two stories actually overlap a bit. So yeah, I don't think we've really got anything more about City of Heroes to say, because it's City of Heroes. It's still good, and now that the textures are actually starting to get good and pretty, it doesn't look as dated as it used to. Mechanically, it still feels a bit dated though. There's not a whole lot they're going to do with that. If they try to change it, they'll inevitably ruin it. One of these days, maybe we'll have to actually do something properly in this game. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I was all rearing to go when it finished and started working and the client was available to everybody and so on. But when I actually started trying to play it, the latency was so horrifying that I wasn't able to really do anything.
Yeah, the only time I'm actually getting lag now is I think it's actually an issue with how the game works. So I've picked up Willpower, the Willpower subtree, and gotten the super jump out of that. Now, Super Jump, all of these actual super travel powers have been tweaked a bit, and most of them have a secondary effect. For the willpower one, it allows you to stomp the ground before you take off, which not only knocks down everything around you and gives them all a defense debuff, if you jump immediately after it, you go zooming off at ridiculous speed. And even without any enhancements on that, it seems like the speed is so great that the game just says, well, I don't know anymore, and just starts lagging.
I see.
So it's a lot of fun, but yeah, the game hates you for it. So yeah, I'm trying, what am I trying? Savage Melee? Which is all about using natural claws as well as bio armor as a secondary, which is actually kind of cool, because once you get down to here, you get an adaptation, and that gives you 3 different stances, basically. And all the other passives and active defenses you get interact with those 3 stances, which is a pretty cool way of doing things. So you could essentially fill any either offensive or defensive role. Right. As for the rest of my week, I haven't done much. I've been working.
Yeah, sounded like it sucked.
It's been fun. Mad scramble to figure things out as we go along. And we're actually just about to Drunk Cowboy season in the next few weeks. You know, the official Drunk Cowboy season. Unfortunately, it doesn't mean you can shoot them. But, this year I think is going to be interesting because we've potentially got either the lockdowns going to sweep in again and just close the entire thing down, or all the pubs are just going to shut down and not let the Cowboys in. We can hope.
I wouldn't bet on it.
I would. The pubs are well and sick of these. What happens when you take, a kid who's fresh out of school, stick him on a cattle property in the middle of nowhere with no one to talk to, and then suddenly dump him in a town where he's anonymous with a group of his idiot mates?
Even though they know that they can and will spend their entire paycheck there?
Yeah,
or do they do
about to
enough
say,
damage to offset that?
Yeah. The pubs are usually
yeah, but if they're dumb kids, they also have dumb kid wallets, which means they don't have a purse string.
They do.
So surely some of them
Oh, no.
have got to just dump all their money.
They do, but they're also anonymous, and therefore they're thieving little bastards.
Oh, so they steal crap.
They steal crap.
Gotta love it.
Out of them times I see them, and a bunch of them are walking out carrying as many pub glasses as possible.
They probably
Yeah,
don't drink that much all the time either.
I knew students who would do that kind of thing as just a matter of course, like it was their right
Yeah.
to just, I need to stock my flat's cupboards, so I'll just steal as much cutlery and glasses as I can lay my hands on.
Yeah.
And
do that.
They the idea that it was stealing never even occurred to them.
Yeah.
They said, it's not chained down, therefore it's basically mine already.
They gave me this glass, therefore it is mine. No, that's not how that works. This quest takes I've read so many times. Twim Shot is going to be yelling from the far end of the corridor. He's good at that. Tell you what, it's actually well worth doing this quest line here, but just to watch Flambeau here. Because she's an attention whore. And she's also a very shit hero. So she actually turns villain about halfway through the story, just so she can get attention. And she's a shit villain too.
I see.
It is a lot of fun, that whole arc, because she's just so awful. Nobody wants her around because she's that annoying. Right. I'm just really stretching to find what I've actually done this week. Think of anything. So I'm going to stop it. I also need to pay attention to quest text because I don't know where I'm supposed to be.
Man, your week sucked.
It's been bad. I've actually had a couple of times where I've been able to sit down and actually play some games. rarely, and it's like I sit down and I just can't.
Yeah. You come
Just
home too
can't.
burnt.
So
Yeah,
even that's too much effort.
I want to keep going on Yakuza Zero. Not Yakuza Zero. Yakuza Like a Dragon. I've gotten a little bit further in that. I got the chick character. I
Oh, so
kind
you
of
can
like her.
bop.
She's not really
Yeah.
to put up with anyone's nonsense.
Yeah. I like how she fights by like distracting people by looking helpless and clobbering them with a handbag.
Yeah. Presumably she's got a brick in there.
Yeah, she heals the party with if you change her to the idol class, she sings for them. It's great.
Yeah. So yeah, she's great. That game is, oh boy, it's a trip. Like I did the whole infiltrate the enemy Yakuza thing, and that's fun because there's a big guy who shows up and just seems to want to solve all the problems by eating the party out a window.
Yeah.
He doesn't obviously look at where the party's ending up because otherwise he would just see that he's thrown them straight across the alleyway into another window.
Well, I mean, if you're not a Yakuza protagonist, getting chucked out a window generally ruins the rest of your month.
Yeah.
Even though they didn't fall that far, that's still far enough to break an arm.
Yeah, it would hurt. So yeah, the adventures of, what is it, ex-Yakuza deadbeat, a bum, an ex-detective, or failed detective, say at this point, and
He
a
was-
sick of everyone's shit bartender.
Yep.
Good times.
That's like a dragon.
Yep. So yeah, hopefully I'll be able to sit down. Evol, what have you been up to?
What have I been up to? It wasn't a particularly exciting week for me. I didn't do anything particularly notable. I played some of that demo of Monster Hunter Stories. I quite enjoy it. I think it's quite a charming game, quite accessible. There's a certain amount of strategic depth without it being, drowning you in things, which is I kind of expected to be drowned in things since it's a Monster Hunter game, but it's got more of a sort of a for kids attitude. So it's not trying to murder me with game concepts the way most Monster Hunter games do. Although there's still an awful lot of stuff that's just kind of not documented. But
it's not as bad as baseline Monster Hunter though.
no. But yeah, I'm quite enjoying that. I'll probably pick it up when it gets released, and can't be that long from now, all right?
A couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks.
Really?
22nd.
22nd.
So I've also played that demo. I haven't actually finished it because I ran it at the time, but I don't think they introduced the right of channeling in the demo, which is the big thing they've changed. So
right.
they've made a lot of big changes, like being able to actually bring companions with you into a battle. Like the first game, you don't really have companions with you for the most part. Like when you're doing infiltrating the doctor's lab, you've got Debly with you, who is dead weight. But that's about it.
Is he the guy that rides on the Poogie?
Yeah, he calls himself a rider and he rides around on a Poogie. And he's just generally completely useless.
I see.
They've made a bunch of changes. They've aged everything up a bit because the first game was very cutesy and kiddie. Which was okay for the kids, but it wasn't really Monster Hunter so much.
Is the anime a reasonable reflection of what the game was like?
Not really, but it tells the story better.
Oh dear, if that was better, then
Yeah. The anime story, the game story, a lot of it is, oh no, there is monster, it is in the way, go do thing, until the doctor turns up. In that case, it becomes Riders and the Doctor both control monsters, therefore they are both evil. What is the difference here? And the only one actually speaking against, assuming everything is all the same, is Navarro.
When Navarro is the voice of reason.
Yeah. So yeah, they've aged everything up. They've completely overhauled the rite of channeling, as as I understand. What it was before is like you have 2 monsters and they've got 9 slots, which will each have a gene. And if you can merge monster B into monster A, sort of, and copy 1 gene over, provided that the slot on both monsters is both open and has a gene in it. And you can't move genes around between slots. It's just, if it's in the bottom left, it's got to be in the bottom left on the new monster as well.
Right.
So,
And you can't clear a slot.
No. Which was great because I was able to make a Rathian that could use Kirib Hekko's song, and it was just a Rathian that would just sit there and heal itself and never died, which was nice. Sadly, you cannot give it Kirib Hekko's Deviljho drop. I don't know what Kirib Hekko does.
Oh, so this is what the gene compatibility list is about.
Yeah. So they've completely overhauled that. They've actually made it, good and able to be used during the story. Like you're extremely restricted in the first one with what you can and can't do with it until you get an item which you really only get in the post game. You get a couple during the story and that's about it. And they do let you kind of customize the slots a bit more.
Right.
But
Yeah, I haven't finished the demo either because I sort of once I hit level 11, which is it seems to be the cap. Like I stopped getting EXP at level 11, and I'm like, I can't really bring myself to invest more time not getting EXP. I mean, I know I could just start a whole bunch of new monsters, but that feels kind of weird.
You can go out and get all of the monsters.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really understand a lot of the mechanics of like how do you get a monster? How is it? It seems like almost like it's just down to using paintballs or whatever a lot of the time.
If you want a specific monster, you got to use a paintball on them and then chase them back to their leg.
But I don't. After that, I don't know like what determines the quality in that, or are the upper qualities even available for low end monsters? That kind of thing. Like I don't even know.
Not in the initial area. First game is any indication.
Even in those like sparkling gold mines,
you'll get a slightly better one in there.
Very slightly.
Very slightly.
Very, very slightly.
There she is.
And ultimately, it will still be a Kulu Yaku.
Yeah.
With everything that implies.
A slightly better Kulu.
Who is still Kulu.
Who is still Kulu and still googly eyed.
Although, I mean, he's a bit of a champ early on in that demo.
He beats up Navarro.
Yeah, and then Navarro, of course, gets his terrible revenge in his whatchamacallit, special thing, combat move. What do you want to call it? I can't remember.
So, other things they've changed is they've given the combat a really big overhaul. The combat in the first one was very it was basically rock, paper, scissors, which is still in the game. You pick your either tech, speed, or power, and if you confront the monster directly, it's like whoever has the winning matchup will do the damage. Except some damage still overflows and splashes back onto the one who won anyway. Which has gotten me KO'd a couple of times.
Yeah, because it's not really shown visually that you're taking the hit in a lot of ways.
You get the number splash up, but it's only very, very, very briefly.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult to tell that you're actually The thing is that I saw it happen to monsters a lot early on.
Yeah.
So I realised that it was possible quite quickly.
Great when it happens to monsters, not so much when it happens to you. So, yeah, each monster will have a pattern as to what moves they use, so you can usually predict what they're going to throw out.
Yeah, like so far, that of course it's the start of the game. They're all quite simple, and I'm wondering whether or not there are more complex ones later. The thing that bothers me about that, I suppose, is that there's not. If there are complex ones, the game doesn't appear to have any way of recording them. You have to remember all of them.
Yeah.
Like you have to remember, say, oh well, Kulu Yaku's going to use technical attacks, and when he picks up a rock, he's going to switch to power attacks, and Velocidrome's going to use speed attacks, and when he gets angry, he's going to switch to power attacks, and that sort of thing.
the first game was less good on it because yes, they would follow a pattern, but every now and again they'd just say, you know what? No, I'm not going to follow the pattern. I'm just going to throw out something random, and there's absolutely no way of telling when or if they would do that.
Mercifully, they don't really seem to do that anymore, other than the fact that sometimes they will not use a move.
Yeah.
But it seems like their changing pattern is always preceded by some sort of tell or animation.
Yes, they've gone out of their way to do that this time.
Except your monsties have no such compunctions about deviating wildly from their strategy over and over again.
Yeah, they just tend to do whatever they want. Like,
Which can be extremely frustrating.
Yeah. But yeah, you do have a bit more of a control over them.
Look, you can force them to do a skill or whatever.
Provided you've got the kinship to do it.
One thing that tripped me up quite a few times is that I couldn't get a grip on when you can dual attack. Like, it seemed to be sometimes the conditions for a dual attack would be fulfilled while a skill was in use, and sometimes they wouldn't.
Yeah, it's not supposed to go off when they're using a skill.
But if they're using a skill on their own, like if you did not tell them to, it seems to go off.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
I'm not sure whether or not the conditions of the skill apply in that situation, though.
Yeah, we have to experiment with that, I think.
Yeah, so there's, like I said, there's stuff that's not quite documented that I'm not really sure on how it all fits together. But I'm enjoying playing with it, and it's sort of cute without being twee the way the previous one was.
Yeah, the first one was very twee. Except for whenever Val turned up, it was like, I'm edgy for no reason.
Yeah, he had a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah.
Something vicious. It also doesn't seem to really care too much about the story of the previous one at all. I don't seem to need to know any of that, which is good, because I don't really want to go back and play the previous one.
I'm doing it anyway, but yeah, there's a few recurring characters around, but by and large, like Roberto, the really lazy hunter who doesn't like bugs, is there and fairly prominent.
Yeah, so I didn't play all that much through the story because I was basically having too much fun just abusing Kula Yuku.
It's what you have to do.
I mean, that's his role. That's his role in society. It's to be the punching bag for everybody who wanders by.
No monster has gotten is so punchable as Kula Yuku.
When he apparently rated pretty highly in their latest monster popularity poll as well.
Yeah.
Like, Kulu's really up there. He's one of the few new monsters that's up there. The other new monster being Gos Harag for some reason.
Gos Harag, okay.
Yeah, he's really popular.
Maybe people like Ice Sword Yetis.
I guess he's got the weird distinction of being the monster to fight who's probably the closest to fighting another hunter.
Yeah.
Because he actually uses weapons and he uses them as weapons. But yeah, so yeah, I had fun with that. I'll probably buy it. I was, freshly appalled to see that if I buy it from the store for delivery on the 9th, which is the release date here, which is Friday, I think, it costs me less than buying it on the Nintendo store.
Nintendo store is horrendously overpriced, and it never actually, drops in price.
Yeah, and I was talking to Ari about this before the show, and I wonder if they actually want people to use their online store or whether they want people to walk past the amiibos instead.
Yes. I mean, they win either way.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is like that you would think, oh, well, I want to encourage as many people to buy my product as possible. Therefore, we want the store to be cheaper because people will pull the trigger if they always know they're getting it for the cheapest price.
Yeah.
And that would militate against people going into a store where they can find amiibos. So
you need to go to the physical shop to get the amiibos. They really want you to.
Yeah, but yeah, are there amiibos for this?
Yes, there is one for.
Don't say Naviru. Don't say Naviru.
No, Naviru has an amiibo from the previous one.
I see.
There's also the amiibo cards for the, which all work with Rise, by the way.
Yes,
They give
well,
some unique stuff in there.
lucky for
So-
some, but I don't have those, and I don't really want to. Honestly, I don't want to encourage that business model. Like, I know that there are a lot of people who value them as collectibles, but I just don't like where that leads, generally speaking.
Like, they're a fairly decent quality little figurine.
Yeah, but they're just perpetuating the predatory brick and mortar store along with other predatory business strategies. Like, I think we've got enough business strategies without encouraging another one. But
It's just a way to sell day one DLC in a brick and mortar store.
I guess.
if all of the amiibos were just attached to collector's editions, then I wouldn't care. But the fact that they are basically less ugly Funko Pops as well is sort of
Yeah, let's face it, there is nothing worse than Funko.
no. There is nothing worse than Funko Pops. Like, even unbelievably cringe people can recognize cringe in Funko Pops. So yeah. Anyway, I'll probably pick that up when it comes out. But yeah, I don't know that I'll play much more of the demo, except other than to maybe dick around when I'm incredibly tired or something, because it bothers me that their EXP is going to waste.
And plus, there's a Kulu there that needs to be bullied.
Yeah, there is always going to be a cooler that needs to be bullied. Although I find myself disliking Yan Kutku more because he seems to be sort of like Kulu who thinks he's all that.
Yeah, Young Kutku had a special googly-eyed place in my heart beforehand, but Kulu kind of surpassed him.
Yeah, like I think
Young
Kulu is
Kutku-
just the funnier one.
Yeah, Kutku gets a lot of points though because it eats Conchus. And
I guess that's
Conchus
true.
are Satan.
Like they're like extremely small whatchamacallit, bullfangos.
Yeah,
That
they tend to be able to very easily hide in the scenery.
well, because they're the
breathe
color of sand, and I bet they live in sand.
Yeah, they do, and they also hide under bushes and things like that. But when they curl up into the ball, they're basically a Monster Hunter pillbug. When they curl up in a ball, though, they will fly through the air at ridiculous speeds, and they will smack you square in the back of the head. Usually at the most damnedest moment of a combo.
And ensure that
And-
you get eaten.
Yeah, and then, Devil Joe that you're fighting will just sit on you. And that'll be the end of it. At least with a Bullfango or a Renoplos, you can see them coming. Honshu, you can't.
No, my experience with bullfangos is that they always charge you from directly behind off screen.
Oh yeah, they always seem to circle around behind the camera. Renoplos is the same. It's basically a or reptilian, but with
just
the
seems
ugliest
kind of-
armor in the game.
It does seem kind of weird that there's no Aptonoths in Rise.
Yeah, but they've
Like,
been a
'cause
staple.
from what I've heard, there's never been a Monster Hunter game with no Aptonoths.
Yeah.
But maybe they'll add them later. I don't know.
I
Well,
feel
they-
actually sorry for the kid in the Stories anime who gets the Aptonoth. Like,
Yeah, I was
congratulations,
thinking that.
you've got a cow.
I was thinking that myself. Like, when I got the Aptonoth egg, I was like, yeah, what do you want me to do with this? It's like, I don't want to raise an explicitly a prey animal as my combat partner.
Yeah. An Aptonoth is the Monster Hunter equivalent of a cow. And
So
it's as
one
interesting.
unit generic prey animal that gets picked on by literally everything else. Great Jagras can swallow one whole.
Yeah.
He's not exactly high on the freaking totem pole.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's that. What else did I do? Played a little bit of Monster Hunter Rise. Played some after the show last week and before the show this week. Having a first real crack at some of the Apex monsters that are not Azeros, and some of them are quite mean. Like, really mean. I think that putting them in the Rampage was a bad idea. Because anything that happens in a Rampage is functionally, unless you meet it in the story, hidden from the rest of the game as played normally. But they are really cool monsters with cool fights. They're much different from Tempered.
Yeah.
they a lot of them fight radically differently. So I haven't done all of them yet, but Rathian has got extra abilities where she basically will shoot her spines out of her tail, and they will stick into the ground, and they'll create poison zones while you fight, which is a humongous pain in the ass because you keep standing in them. As far as I can tell, Apex Diablos is very, very close to being an even more aggro version of the whatchamacallit, that Blood Boil one.
Yeah. The Deviant Diablos.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was called. But yeah, so it's, you know, a dark coloured Diablos who's covered with red scars and literally drills into the ground when burrowing. Like, the regular Diablos will dig its way into the ground. Apex Diablos will literally spin like a drill as it is burrowing. And when it is on the land, it also likes to spin around a lot, and it generates black smoke, which bursts like the steam from the Deviant one, and is generally extraordinarily aggressive and does redonkulous damage. So quite the rough customer indeed. And just because it emerges from a place and you aren't in that place doesn't mean you aren't going to take damage, because it emerges at quite a fair clip and will fly through the air to hit you. But yeah, so he's a tough customer as well. Apex Zinogre is the Zinogre from Hell, who has all kinds of different sort of ranged lightning bullcrap that he can do, and basically can sick his Fulgur bugs on you. So he's generally a horrible experience as well, and I mean that in the best possible way. But Ari and I,
T-Rex, and then just bully him.
And Ari and I had our first crack at Apex Rathalos just before
the best in air quotes Apex monster so far, just for his one ability.
Yes, like, so he appears on the scene, and his fireballs that, you know, your usual Rathalos shoots, they're not like regular fireballs no more. no, they set off a Teostra-sized supernova every time they hit.
Like, there's the verbal flowering of something nukes something if it lights it on fire really big. That is not what we mean when we say Rathalos nukes the arena. He literally sets off a nuclear explosion that covers the entire arena. When he first shows up, he blows up the entirety of the first area and destroys all your defenses.
More or less, yeah. I don't think that he's actually programmed to do that as an appearance thing, but he is in ultimate mode when he flies in. And because he's in the air and he gets the first shot because he's approaching, he has time to simply blow everything up. He just rains fire down on you. And everything explodes. And it's very hard to get out of the way. You can technically get out of the way, but it's one of those situations where you can see there are multiple spheres of impending death around the place, and you're trying to look for the tiny chink between them as they will come raining down. And of course, as you run away from one, you're almost certainly going to run into the radius of the next one to land. But
or you could be an idiot like me, sitting on whatever I was sitting on, waiting for the Apex monster to come in to see what'll happen, and not be able to get off the ballista or whatever it was in time before the giant fireball explodes.
Oh, here he comes, and here comes his fireball. I wonder if we're friends.
Yeah, it was. This is what Tempers should have been. It's, as they were Tempers
with a few more stats on them.
Yeah, basically the Tempers, they hit a little bit harder, they had a little bit more health, and their tempo was upped a little bit. That was pretty much it. In this case, all of the above, plus they've got new moves and new behaviors.
They're extra cranky.
They are indeed extra cranky. The only one that we haven't done yet, I think, is Mizutsune. Apex Mizutsune, which I don't know what Apex Mizutsune does, but
say goodbye to friction.
Mizutsune's not as high tier as some of the others, so that might not be as dramatic, but I'm still interested to see what it does. But we've been fighting all of these things within the context of the Rampage, which means that your damage is buffed through the roof. I'm kind of scared to fight these things on foot. I'm not sure I can kill one within 50 minutes. Especially with the amount of dodging you have to do. But, yeah. And my damage output is not great because I play an almost full defense build most of the time, so that I can just keep bullying through damage. But yeah, at any rate, that was fun. A lot of people are done with Rise now, it sounds like, based on online chatter, because there's not enough content, in their opinion, to keep you going. I'm not done with it. I've got plenty of other things to do still. I've got a pile of quests I haven't done, like the obnoxious ones, which have multiple Elder Dragons in them. So I'm still going to be playing that for a little while yet. But I can sort of see where the people who are saying, "Oh, well, it's dried up now," are coming from, and I'm wondering where the roadmap will go next because I haven't looked at what the recent announcements have been.
Yeah, hopefully we've got G rank coming down the pipe.
Is that another game though? Like, I don't know how they do this.
Well,
Because some people have been saying that, oh, well, they'll release G rank, but you have to buy the game again. Because I don't know if I'm down for that.
I honestly expect they're going to do the same thing they did with Iceborne. G rank is an expansion.
Yeah, I don't mind paying the price for an expansion DLC, even premium price like Iceborne, but I don't really want to buy another game that I have to start over from scratch.
Yeah, like, if you're going to sell a classic old school expansion, it's got to have the content in there to justify the price. Iceborne did, and then some. So I didn't mind paying for that.
I'm sort of ashamed at how little of the Iceborne content I actually played. Like, I didn't fight Safi'jiiva, I didn't fight Fatalis, I didn't fight Alatreon, I didn't even really fight Zinogre, to be honest, let alone Stygian Zinogre.
Yeah, and not to mention the whole post-game zone, I still have no idea how that works.
Yeah, that Guiding Lands thing, I don't really understand how it works, but everything seemed to be plumbed into that, and I wasn't really sure how to work it. But yeah, it was a great expansion with a lot of content, and like I said, I feel kind of ashamed for not having played it because I kind of want to encourage more of this, please. But yeah, what else? I don't think there's much else to talk about. Anime season's coming to an end, and the new ones are starting up now. Although I haven't had time to watch much of any of them. There's a linking recap episode for the Slime anime, which is the same format as last time. So Veldora and Ifrit narrating the happenings of the past season with color commentary. And I watched the first episode of I can't even remember what it's called because it's got an obnoxious light novel long name, but the one where the main character is isekai to become the villainess of a Otome game.
I see.
Except that she's kind of thick. I did the previous one ended in a very conventional and reasonably satisfying way, so I was sort of surprised to hear that there was another season, but apparently the hijinks continue. So but it's probably just because of popular demand, because she's such a charming character. She's got that sort of unique charm that can only be acquired by extremely well-meaning but kind of slow people.
Like, there's a lot of isekai this coming season. Although there is
Yeah,
one.
I haven't looked at the list because the sheer magnitude of isekai contamination is so high.
There is only one there aside from Slime that I really like at, and that's like a guy gets isekai'd because they need a hero, and instead of going and traveling the land and defeating the bad guy, he sits down, breaks out the books, and gets about to fixing this country's economy.
Yeah, I heard it. I heard
forget
about
what it
that
was
one.
called though.
Yeah, it's hard to decide what's worth watching these days when everything seems to be just carbon copies of everything else. But yeah, when I've got some time, I'll sit down and try out a bunch of them. But yeah, also it seemed kind of curious that they decided to do an anime of Scarlet Nexus basically alongside the game release itself.
I'm actually amazed that game came out so quick. I wasn't expecting it to come out for a few months yet.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised about that as well, but I expect that we're going to see a lot of sort of surprising release dates because of the unbelievably great variance in what should I say? Working from home work habits possessed by individuals in a variety of industries.
Yeah.
There is a there's a Mitchell and Webb skit. I sent it to Aristiel about how people work from home,
Step
which
one, remove pants.
I will not I will not go into any great detail here, but I'll dredge it up and chuck it in the live show chat. Anyway, I don't think I've got much else to talk about. Most of the anime that I've watched in this sort of downtime between cores was I bought Bofuri on Blu-ray
Yes.
on a whim. And it's I basically I bought it because I found it charming, and the reason I found it charming is that basically the main character is having the MMO experience that everybody who plays MMOs wants.
That we can never have again.
No.
She gets
because
horrendously overpowered, as is typical for an isekai, but not even actually an isekai. But she's so just clueless about it. She kind of stumbles into power and is having the time of her life while she does it.
Yeah, so one of the last things she says in the last episode of the season is that I'm just playing the game normally, and everybody just sort of like, no, you're not.
No, you're not.
But yeah, there's a sort of infectious enthusiasm and wonder that she has towards everything, while also discovering cool things and having cool adventures. Like that's what MMOs were supposed to be about, and it's just kind of not really possible to do anymore because that's not what the focus of developers is for the most part.
Yeah, and need to jump in technology before we can really start seeing that.
Maybe I'm not quite sure what that jump would look like.
Probably something on the AI front, I think.
I feel like humanity is going to annihilate itself somehow before that comes along.
Almost certainly.
But yeah, at any rate, I enjoyed rewatching it again, and I ended up watching it in like 2 sit downs because it's such a fun show to watch.
So they did tease the second season. I really don't know where they could take it.
It would just be more of the same, I think. The trick would be not wearing the joke out.
Yeah, like she's already got 6 different forms at this point.
Well, she has 3 main ones. Plus her base form.
Yeah, okay, 4 then.
Although one of them is modular.
the mecha suit, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess you could technically count the poison sphere and the wool ball.
Yeah, the wool ball.
So you're starting to hit 6.
The wool ball is not supposed to be used the way she does. It's like just supposed to be a defensive thing, if I recall. But no,
I thought it was for harvesting wool.
I think it may have been just harvesting wool. But she weaponizes it.
At any rate, yeah, I don't have much else to talk about. We've got a short time frame to work with, so I'm just going to call it quits there.
Yes, indeedy. So before we go into Ari's week, we should take a break so I can behind the scenes stuff for him.
Yep, so we're going to quickly set it up so you can see my screen while we're talking about stuff, and hopefully you'll be able to read it this time, and that'll make talking about what I'm going to talk about a bit easier.
We'll try.
So we'll be right back real quick. And we're back.
Yes, indeed. So, provided I've done all this right. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so y'all can see my screen. It's low FPS so that the stuff is more readable.
I'm trying to cram an upline and a downline through crappy Australian internet.
Yep, so that's why we're going at 15 FPS. Don't worry, that is intentional.
There we go.
So, I guess we'll jump right into my week since we got it set up. I think Paul said he was done.
Yeah.
So, okay. My week consisted of a whole lot of normal, everyday stuff at work, and then coming home and messing around with Shadowverse. So, I finished the story. I talked about it last week. So now I know what all the characters are on all the cards and stuff. And the new set came out. And I did not want to go crazy with ranked play until the new set came out, because that's when rotation happens. Because if I go to the shop, you'll see, and go to buy packs. This Renaissance Chronicles pack is the newest pack. It just came out. As you can see, I pulled 94 packs, and I have not spent a dime on the special deal up here at all to get 10 packs and bonuses. I've not spent any on the daily pulls with crystals. I've only used the rupees in-game currency, and I'd already got all of the big bursts you can get by doing story and fighting the AI, and from the anniversary event, plus the anniversary event rupees. So I just have done my dailies, which are basically boiled down to win 3 ranked matches. So when the way rotation works in this game is fairly straightforward. There's nothing complicated about it. There are 4 sets always, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets always in rotation. So currently we have Renaissance, Darkness Over Velsar, Eternal Awakening, which is your Grand Blue Fantasy crossover pack, Storm Over Reveal, and Fortune's Hand. We had World Uprooted this pack until the new pack came out, and it's now moved into Unlimited. You can still buy packs from it. And your card pack points up here, where if you open 400 packs of a set, you're allowed to get any of the legendaries in that set for free. You can get 1 legendary in that set for free. So if you're trying to get like the cards that give you a leader, like Ania over here, that you can only pull from the pack and can't craft, you can instead, if you just really are unlucky, the game will bail you out at 400. Although you'd have to spend a lot of rupees.
You'd have to have been really unlucky not to get what you're wanting after 400 packs, though.
For a leader card, it's not unreasonable to not get it at 400. Leader cards are stupidly rare. You got 1 out of all the packs you've ever opened.
And that's because the Desire filter for me is broken.
Yeah, so I'm open 94 out of the 400 for my tradable, and I did get one of the leaders. I got Alia here, little dragon girl. So, yeah. So I also had not crafted any cards. I'd been saving all of my dust, this stuff over here, where you go to liquefy cards. You can liquefy all your extra copies of cards you got laying around. So if you have more than 3, you can just push the liquefy extras button and it'll give you dust. I've crafted quite a few cards to make some decks functional. But I have a rule where if I'm still pulling from the pack, I will not craft 3 copies of the card. I will only craft 2 out of 3, because if I get a 3rd one after I've crafted it, I'm going to be so mad. So I have not been doing that. And there are also the temporary gem system I showed off last week that you can use to get legendaries. So I try to prioritize gold cards over, which are the second highest rarity, over legendaries, because legendaries take 3,500 dust. I have 33.3 down here. I had about 70,000 before I started this rotation. And each copy of a legendary costs 3,500, and that's quite a bit of dust, because cards only liquefy for half of their value. But gold cards, on the other hand, are only 800 dust, and relatively speaking, that's almost nothing. So, I've been prioritizing those and made a few decks. The deck I am currently running is this one. We can preview it here. This is not the top tier deck this season, but may wind up being one of the top tier decks this season after the meta gets fixed. And this deck revolves around this card, which is Mistalina and Baleon, and is the furry and the waifu.
Oh,
so it has...
Put them both on the same card then.
Yeah. So they each had their own individual cards in the set that was focused around the forest planet, but they're just one card now, because this pack's theme is characters in the story that were previously prominent but haven't been around in a while, are coming back and getting new cards with new effects. So they're back and they have this card. It has Storm, which means it can attack the turn it's played, and it can attack anything that's a valid target, including the enemy's face. So this thing can immediately do its attack damage to the opposing player if they don't have something with ward on the field or something to stop it. So, and its fanfare effect, which means when this follower, or when this thing comes into play, this effect activates automatically. It'll bop a random follower, which is monster. I interchange the words because I played Yu-Gi-Oh too much. It bops a random follower for 5, which is usually enough to kill something at around turn 6 where this thing's got to be played because it costs 6 mana. And then if you have any amulets, which are permanent play spells that sit on the field and do something, they just sit there and give a passive effect. If you have one in your hand, you can discard it to have it get 2 more attack and 1 more health. And if it happens to be this stupid tree thing, which is the gimmick of the Naturia cards, which is just a 1 mana tree that does nothing while it's on the field, but if you play another one, the old one's destroyed and you draw a card. If you have one in your hand, you can get 3 play points back, making this effectively only cost a 3-cost card that can only be played after turn 6. So it's a really good card, and can sometimes close out games if your opponent's just been playing solitaire the whole game and not interacting with you. Which is the problem this rotation. They made a boo-boo. A pretty big boo-boo at that.
Ooh.
So, remember the leader you pulled, Fern?
Yeah.
So, I don't know if I can see it in color here. I think I can see it on the tradables menu.
The walking internet meme as a hero, one I pulled.
That only makes it worse, honestly, because there's a legitimate lore reason she speaks in internet lingo as well, despite being from a forest planet with no internet. And you're not going to play the story, but basically there are ruins of an ancient civilization, and they have video files of people from back before civilization got destroyed on their planet.
Oh no.
And they are basically just archives of vloggers.
Oh no.
So while she was exploring the ruins, she adapted the ancient speaking style.
Oh no.
So to them, it's sort of like a ancient high culture type of archaic speaking style.
Whereas anyone with sense would take one look at it and say, yeah, I'm glad the civilization died out.
So them saying things like IDK lol is seen as very fana in their culture. Latika is the only character that do this. So I'll show it to you here, the card. Remind me to go look up what her card quote is, because I gotta go to the crafting page to see that. But this
deserves to collapse.
Yeah. So this card was an accident, I think, because this effect doesn't look broken and probably didn't playtest broken, or they made a change to the cards that enable it at the last minute and didn't test them enough, and just didn't think people would use the deck in a certain way. So what it does, when it comes into play, put Latika's Embrace into your hand. If I click this button, it'll show you what that is. It's a 0-cost spell card that does 3 damage to a random enemy follower. Not a particularly powerful effect, just a little bit of removal for playing her on turn 4 when you can play her. Okay, but the important thing is, this thing costs nothing. So, it costs 0. Forestcraft's whole gimmick is, based on the number of cards played that turn, you can enable certain effects on different followers when they come into play. So, at turn 6, most players can do the combo that I'll talk about in a second consistently. And it has the other effect the fanfare is only the first line. The next effect is all one effect. Whenever you play a card, if it's the fourth card you've played this turn, recover 3 play points, so get 3 mana back. If it's the 8th, evolve this follower. That means it now becomes a 5/5 and can attack 2 times per turn.
A hell of a long turn.
Yeah. And then if it's the 12th, gain +3/+3 and Storm. And also it can attack.
Cards per turn, you're going to piss everyone off.
Yeah, and can attack 2 times per turn. Well, not only that, they usually will. There's a 2-minute clock on everybody's. No, there's a 1.5-minute clock on everybody's turn. I think it's somewhere between 1 and 2 minutes. And what you wind up with is Forestcraft players sitting there doing calculus on Latica, trying to figure out if they can, because they have other cards, to get the 12 cards needed to make this thing busted, because it can't punch the enemy face the turn it's played unless you get that 12th card. The rest of it's mostly irrelevant. It can clear even a board clear for 4 plus a card played requirement isn't that big a deal. It still can trigger clash effects. It still has to go over your board. So that's not that big of a deal. Even if it said destroy all enemy followers at 8, that would not be that big of a deal. It's the Storm keyword. That means they can attack the same turn they're played, and that includes face. There's an alternative called Rush, which is what every follower has when it evolves this keyword. And that lets you attack anything on the board, but you can't go face until your next turn. So, I'll show you some of the cards that make this a little busted. Because they're fairly common in Forestcraft decks, just because you need to get a lot of cards played. But they use cards like this. We go to my Forestcraft deck. They use things like... can I go to preview instead to see a bigger version? There we go. They use things like Shamu and Shana, that when it comes into play based on the number of cards, gain Storm. Evolve it. If at least 6 other cards were put in play, put their really powerful baby cards into your hand that cost 2. You get, what you call it? They run synergy with Alberta, one of the Grand Blue characters, I think, or she was in the Grand Blue set anyway. And she just has a baby follower that has Storm, but if she survives whatever she attacks, she gets banished. And she comes back with Storm. So, and that happens any time that you play 4 cards, and then she banishes herself again, so you can't do anything about her. She's just a bonus every time you play 4 cards once per turn. Then there's the way they get that many cards played is with things like Deepwood Wolf. It costs 7 up here, but it has this effect Accelerate 1, which means instead of playing it as the monster card you see over here, you can play it as a spell instead for a much cheaper mana cost. And for 1 mana, you can bounce something back to your hand. Any follower amulet is the only things you can stick on the board. So bounce anything on your side of the field back to your hand, and then draw a card. And then you have this one that says put a Fairy Wisp into your hand and bounce for 1. And a Fairy Wisp is a 0-cost monster that furthermore kills itself if at least 2 other cards were played this turn, which means it doesn't take up a board slot. You're only allowed to have 5 things on the board at a time. So what they do is they just amass a ton of cards and use draw cards like this thing's effect, where when it comes back to your hand, draw a card, and it costs 1 for this crystallize effect, which is the same thing as Accelerate, except it turns it into an amulet. They just keep bouncing junk and drawing cards, and then they set up this impossible board or they set up Latica and they OTK you. And if they don't have OTK, they have this thing called Life Banquet. That if at least 8 other cards were played this turn, summon 2 Deepwood anomalies. You get the bear too, but nobody cares about the bear. The bear's not important. This thing. If it hits you, so it can't do this the turn it's played. It doesn't have Storm, and it's pretty much impossible to give it to it with the amount of mana you're throwing around to do the 8 cards per turn. If it hits the enemy leader, you win the game.
Oh, it's just 1 poke and you win?
Yeah. So it can't attack the turn it summoned like a normal monster, but next turn it can. So you got an, at minimum, 8/8 to deal with. But what really broke the deck, and what we think happened, was they just did not playtest this. Oh, I have it in the... Let me go back to that screen. Was Let me set it to Renaissance. What's this thing? Heroic Resolve. If actually, let's put it up here so we can see it a little better. Add 1 to the number of cards played this turn for 1, and itself counts as a card. So for 1 mana, you get 2 cards. And then you draw a card if at least 4 cards are played this turn, and you give 1/1 to all your dudes. If 8 cards are played, you draw 2 cards and give 2/2 to everything. So you've got 2 10/10s with Ward that you have to deal with, that if they stay alive and they get to attack you, on turn 6, mind you, you lose the game.
Straight up lose.
Yeah. And that's if Latika doesn't OTK you, which she often does. And they still have a full hand, because this stupid thing, they'll play 2 or 3 of them at a time. So they'll just draw 4 new cards and have their hand refueled and ready to go. If you do somehow pull off a miracle and clear that board. So, bit of a mistake with Latika. I would not be surprised if they remove the refund play point effect entirely to just make her that would make her a good card, but not a busted one. Where she does not give you 3 mana back, basically for free. And that deck is just total cancer at the higher end of rank play, and sometimes at the lower end. I'm still relatively low in the ranks, so what I get is free wins because people screw up the combo. Because while it is basically impossible to stop if somebody knows how to do it, what we have is week 1 newbies that can't do Forestcraft calculus and screw up the combo because it's still 12 cards they gotta play.
So this is that situation where the people in the player pool, they all want to net deck easy wins, but are just not good enough to actually use them.
Yeah. So they and this is easily the best deck this season. And it's the only deck that can beat the other Cancer deck this season. Let's go back.
Cancer.
Yeah. The other Cancer deck was an accident. So if I go back to buy cards and go to buy card packs, you'll remember the 1 play point amulet that Naturia has that I showed you earlier to enable the card I'm using. And how it's a 1-cost amulet that kills itself if another copy is put into play. Well, if we go to tradables over here, you'll see this guy. Elephant Head.
That's a weird hat.
Yes, he is looks like some kind of African prince riding on an elephant with an elephant hat.
Yeah.
I don't know what culture he's referencing. He looks like a mishmash.
He probably is a mishmash.
So, you will notice this card has X, Y, and Z variables based on the number of amulets destroyed. For if at least 1, 4, 7, 10, or 13 amulets have been destroyed, banish, not destroy, so you don't get any effects when they die, if they have an effect that triggers when they die, random enemy followers. X equals 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5, respectively. 2 to 14, in a similar every 3 numbers, it heals you for 3 to 15. And then 3, 6, 9, 12 have been destroyed. Summon 1, 2, 3, or 4 amulets. Oh, and also this value of Y up here that does 3, 6, 9, 12, or 15 healing also does that damage to your opponent. So what they do is they just play a ton of these 1-cost trees throughout the game. And they play a whole lot of just obnoxious to deal with stall and healing. And play solitaire the whole game. And don't interact with what you do at all. Except for making their stuff untargetable. So you can't get rid of it yourself with banished effects. And then they get to turn 7 and they drop this jerk.
And everything just blows up.
Banishes your board, which is much worse than destroy. And then heals them back to full health. And puts you on close to dead or dead. And and if you can come back from that, the next turn they can just play another one and win the game. So this deck is just... This was clearly an oversight with a card from a previous pack that I don't know how they didn't playtest this. Nobody's sure how they didn't playtest this, because it's just the most boring deck to fight against. Because you don't play the game. You play against somebody playing solitaire. And just hope you can amass a board that does 20 damage over the course of 6 turns before their turn 7 comes. TLDR, hope you go first and play an aggro deck. And hope you get lucky in high roll. So... That has been the experience in ranked play. What we get instead at low rank play, despite how easy that deck is to play, is people don't know how to build it because there isn't a good site that's in English for Shadowverse yet that keeps track of the top tier decks, and none of the English sites that do exist have updated yet. They're still on the last rotation. So there's not an official deck list from the popular English sites that people can easily Google. So we have people trying to construct their own based on what they've heard, and they're often terrible. And so they wind up with a problem where their hand gets clogged because the stupid deck draws too many cards to ensure that they get Jailen. And the professionally made ones have ways to declog their hand for 0 cost. Just literally, they run a card that just heals them for 1 for 0. That's normally complete trash. Just because it's free and they can get it out of their hand. Because they draw too much. So they every time this has happened in the past, there has been a nerf relatively quickly. And the last time it happened within 2 days of launch. It is not uncommon for these things to, as soon as the first tournament happens, which it just did today, and those 2 decks saw 100% of the top 64 represented in the tournament, they're probably going to get the nerf out pretty quick.
Think?
Yeah. Oh no, there was one Swordcraft guy that made it top 64.
Props.
So,
what was he running anything that took into account the specific opponents that he was opposing?
Not really. He was basically running a better version of my deck with more cards. It used the same mechanic of Rally, where I'll show it to you if I can find it. It has you're not a good example, or somebody that has a good example with Rally. Like this new card, Frenzied Core Master, where Accelerate to play it as a spell, summon 2 dudes that are tiny. It's like a 2/2 and a 1/2. Or if it's in your deck, in your rally count, which is the number of dudes, period, that have entered your play area this turn, or this match. So if you played 15 dudes throughout the course of the match, it comes out of your deck and is automatically summoned. You can summon it from the deck. At 15, it has wards to stop Latika, which is why it's really seen a lot of play. And if you just play it for 7 from your hand, you destroy 3 enemy cards. Cards is big because it can kill anything. And if your rally is somehow 20, although the game should be over long before that, you can nuke their whole board and destroy it. So he was playing a much better version of this.
Basically, he's just playing a deck that enables a very nasty fatty.
Yeah, it doesn't have any big kabooms. He had more Gravens and relied on this for his finisher, I think, when I glanced at the deck. This is a card that just when it's played does damage to face on turn 8, but that's turn 8, which is much different than turns 4 to 6 or turn 7. Because after turn 7, your opponent has gotten access to their power play cards as well and can set up stuff that's a reasonable counter. Most of the stuff that sets up for control decks doesn't start until around turn 4.
Because I mean, the thing is, that what I'm getting at here is that there's this always this question when it comes to game balance in games like this, is that something that spontaneously arises to be flavor of the month might be broken, but how you determine how broken it is basically depends on what rises up to oppose it. Like if it turns out that, oh well, actually, because this guy had some strategy that allowed him to still break into the top 64 despite not running the meta, you don't want the developers to incorrectly decide that, oh well, this means that there is actually counterplay.
Yeah, but their threshold for nerfing stuff has been it's at 40% or higher. When these 2 decks make up the entirety of the top 64 at the last Japanese tournament, I think that's going to send them a pretty clear message. Where is it? It's a 5-cost Runecraft card. Some absolute Chad came up with this and stuck it on the Reddit, and a couple of dudes were running it and posting their win streaks with it at Master level play, because it's just those 2 decks at Master level. So at my level, it's not. You still get a bunch of scrubs. But and that's this card, a 5-drop Runecraft card called Whims of Chaos, that at the start of both players' turns, all the cards in their hand are given a random cost between 1 and 10.
Oh.
So they
So
would run.
basically, it's a deck that you have to fly by the seat of your pants and use raw skill.
But on the other hand, you could get, your big bomb for one cost.
Yeah, so it's a total waste of a card on a bunch of decks. Like Portalcraft right now relies on a bunch of big drops, and so does Dragoncraft. Dragoncraft always does. But so you just auto lose to those crafts. But there is nobody playing those crafts right now at top tier. They're only playing Forest and Haven. So if you change all their cheapo amulets and all those Naturia trees that normally cost 1 in their hand are suddenly shuffling around in cost to anything other than 1, that kind of slows them down a bit and makes the Jalent more bearable when he finally does come out, if they can play him at all.
Yeah. Although if you play that as your center part, you could probably just fill your deck up with giant beat sticks and then shuffle the costs.
Yeah, so unfortunately, there is no way to tutor this card, so all you can do is run 3 copies and a ton of draw on a Runecraft deck and hope for the best.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you have to get to it before turn 5. So, Runecraft does have a lot of draw power, so it can happen. It's just, you gotta fish it out.
Gotta get him out.
Yeah. So, other than that, I've been having fun with this expansion because none of the people at my rank, I bumped into a few. The first match I played, I got creamed by a Latica that knew what she was doing. I don't know how that person, it was probably some master level player that made a Smurf account. But they had a Latica turn 4 or 5 and just OTK'd me from full health.
Fun.
Yeah, so that was fun. But other than that, I've been climbing the ranks super fast. I have, the more win streak you go on, the faster you rank up. So I played about 50 rank matches total over my lifetime playing this game, and 30-ish of them were this week. So the rankings are not that one. I wanted to see what the difference between the ranks is. Here we go. So this is your score when you go up from beginner to AA3 is 0 and 49,999 points. And then after you pass that, you get into master. And that goes again from 0 to 10,000, and then grandmaster goes up forever. Every 10,000 you get a number after it. So I have climbed all the way from beginner 0 all the way up to, I think it was C2? Yeah, C2. In like a week. That's really, really fast.
About halfway is where you'd be starting to run into more people who actually know how the game works than are getting through with pure luck.
Yeah. Despite how generous this game is, these decks, Havencraft doesn't. But everybody's trying Forestcraft because you just can't win against Forestcraft currently with Havencraft. It's not going to work.
You were bagging on it last season.
Yeah. Well, that's because the current Havencraft deck is total solitaire. With the other one, all you had to do was remove Holy Sanctuary. That was it. Just, and some people had the tech card for it and some didn't.
Yeah.
But this season, there's nothing you can do. Even if you destroy the amulets, all that does is help them. Because it makes Jalent fatter faster. There's also the reason I decided to do it this week was because you see this little treasure chest icon, 5 out of 5 above ranked. As you play ranked matches, every 2 or 3 matches, you'll see a little treasure chest pop up. And that means the next time you win a ranked match, you'll get bonus, you'll get either in-game funny money, or a legendary card, or a card back, or an icon or something. And one of the chests every day is guaranteed to be super rare and have a chance to give you a legendary card or card pack ticket, or 10 card pack tickets.
Nice.
Or and the booby price for that one's like 100 gold. So that's why I've been doing ranked this week. And it's in general been a fairly good, fun time, especially playing against people that are just trying to make their own deck, like I am. So I've had a bunch of close games that were a lot of fun. I tried a few other decks. They didn't go very well. Tried Bloodcraft. This deck went through 80 revisions and still isn't good. I tried Mono Bloodcraft, which uses my selected waifu of this game, and it's really hard to pull off and is also a combo deck, which I don't gravitate towards. So gave up on that. Tried Dragoncraft pretty hard, and this deck went through 80 revisions and had a real bad time with this one. But eventually I got it to sometimes win. And that's about where we're at right now. All my other decks are leftovers from last season that I've just edited to make playable in the current format. So yeah, been a lot of fun. I'm explaining it in a lot of detail, but it doesn't actually take that long to play a match, because they're usually over around turn 8 or 9 is when most decks end. Unless it's against Forester Haven, then it ends on, turn 6 or 7 at the latest. So you can go through ranked matches pretty dang quick in this game. So I had a little bit more free time, and I decided to subject myself to PSO22. And their PSO22 and its current in-game content, in air quotes. They have put in 5-star weapons and new enemies that are scaled up that drop them.
Love it. You go straight from the prologue to the end game.
Yeah. We're not even done with what I would consider a prologue.
Yeah.
Either. Like, we haven't beat any kind of big boss. So, I guess Nexalio kind of counts, but...
He's kind of a
Nexfera.
boss.
Yeah, he's a big dragon thing, but he's not that impressive. So, yeah. In PSO22, they added a new enemy type that spawns in the world called Gigantics. And these only spawn during a thunderstorm. And these thunderstorms, the weather in PSO22 has, the way it works is every 3 minutes or so, it will make a roll to determine what the next weather is going to be. And it will have it pattern determined for the entirety of until server reset. So when the server's booted back up, it generates the weather schedule. This weather schedule is invisible to the player, so it might as well be every 3 minutes. You have a chance to get weather that's different, and you have clear skies, cloudy, rain, which is not a thunderstorm, or a thunderstorm. And obviously thunderstorms are weighted super low. So to get to the in-game content, initially what people were doing was they were just, and they still do this, there is no more idling in town in the lobbies that are not B42. B42 is a social block, or B69, which is a porn block.
That's being rather direct about it.
I mean, that's
is.
what it is.
What would you prefer to call it, Fern?
There needs to be a word that's more depraved.
They did make the default setting, yeah.
The degeneracy block.
The degeneracy block, we'll go with that.
They did set symbol art off by default now.
That took
and you can blame
long.
You can blame B69.
Yeah.
So B69 exists. That's a social block, if you want to call it that. People still idle in town there, and people still idle in town in B42. Every other block has everybody evenly distributed across the zones at the 5 major teleport points, because where the monster spawns is relative to where most people are.
Oh, yay.
So you have a bunch of people congregated in the most optimum spots, sitting there waiting for the thunderstorm. And these thunderstorms
sounds like really riveting in-game play.
Yeah.
They'll sit there for 2 to 3 hours waiting on some thunderstorms.
While they play something on their other screen.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. And then miss the thunderstorm. So that's how it was originally. And it's still pretty close afterwards, but they eventually figured out the English server had 3 hours of extra maintenance this week that the Japanese server didn't have. And they rolled this, when they booted the server, they had the same weather schedule.
Okay.
So what they figured out was, as long as somebody on JP would report what time a thunderstorm started, then, and thunderstorms happen in all regions at the same time. If it's storming in one region, it's storming in all of them. They could then predict when the thunderstorms were going to occur in the English side.
Oh,
in
then
the
all
global
you need to
side.
do is just have everyone bunch up at the same place.
Yeah, so what would have happen is a bunch of pugs would happen, and just everybody would start teleporting into a zone's 32-person cap, and about 10-ish minutes or so before the storm happened, and everybody just be standing around, and then there's nothing else to do in the game. So after the Gigantics is over, even if the schedule said another thunderstorm wasn't for 3 hours, everybody would just keep AFKing there. So what you wind up with is two problems. Number one, anybody that isn't level 20 can't do damage to these things, period, end. They're level 24. And they have an absurd amount of HP, and they scale based on the number of people in their vicinity. So any random level 19 or lower that just happens to doodle into the zone by accident and get placed in that room, and they're just there to do their dailies or whatever, and they're running around the area, and one's about to spawn, the entire group is going to dog on that person and start calling him a leecher and telling him to get out.
Oh, that's a bit rude.
So everybody just starts mobbing these low-level players, and it's just turned it into a super cancer community with every person trying to do the current in-game content having to tell lower-level players to GTFO. And you're a lower-level player who doesn't really research the game. What are you going to do if you see a mob of people?
Wander over to see what's going on.
Exactly.
Eh.
So all you're going to do is and the storms can only sometimes last 3 minutes. So you got a time limit to kill these things. So increasing its HP is bad. Really bad. Because if you wind up with a relatively low DPS group, you're going to need all those 3 minutes, and maybe that won't even be enough.
Yay. So we got to get our players all yelling at each other. Hooray.
Yeah. So you have that, and then you have the problem where there's nothing else to do in the game except wait on the next Gigantics. So everybody just goes AFK again. So you wind up with a lot of people in the area that'll just be AFK when the boss spawns.
Get smooshed.
No, they increase its health.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're close enough to be in the range of it, but they're not close enough to get aggro from it.
It's just like raiding Molten Core.
Is it worse?
Yeah, it's even worse.
At least the people on who are AFK during Molten Core would set their characters to auto-follow.
Yeah, at least they wouldn't increase the boss's HP by being AFK.
Yes.
Well, the boss's HP was already calibrated for a group of 40 people.
Yeah, they just increased the fight time.
Yeah, so yeah, that was awful, and is somehow even worse than I imagined it would be.
Sega,
So
what are you doing?
Yeah, what was that? That was your big, we're going to bail the game out with this? This is the worst in-game content I have ever seen
It would have been
in a
setting
video
it up
game.
like an urgent quest, honestly.
It just sounds basically... It doesn't sound like it's a fundamentally bad idea, just like every single part of it is bad. Like, the entire thing was half-baked and nobody checked that the idea was actually coherent before they just gave it the go-ahead to implement.
Yeah, like, there's a bunch of good ideas in there, but they're all... The ones that are actually good, I mean, are all executed poorly, so they're bad anyway.
Final Fantasy has weather-based bosses.
Yeah, it does. Also weather-based fishing.
It's just that, you know where those bosses are going to be if the weather should change, and the weather is random, so people will call out on chat, oh, there's a storm starting in the forest or wherever.
A lot of places have an NPC that will tell you what weather's coming up too.
Yeah, you've got weather predicting NPCs, and the boss's health... I think the boss's health is affected by the number of people, but it's not profound, I don't think.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure to what extent. Generally speaking, the major impediment when you're fighting with an excessive number of people is the latency. But yeah, the thing is, yeah, Final Fantasy does that. World bosses that spawn based on weather.
Yeah.
So, and there are people that AFK while they wait for the weather calls to go out if they really want to farm that boss. But most people don't because there's actually other stuff to do.
And there's no limits either.
Everything about this is just this is a terrible idea that didn't have to be terrible if they just spent 5 minutes thinking about it first.
What beats me is, yeah, you've got these bosses spawning in areas. Why not just, if you're a low-level character, you phase out. You're automatically pushed to another room or something.
Oh my goodness, I just got Jason to NP5 within a few thousand friend points.
I'm not sure if I can congratulate or commiserate with you.
That's okay. My first one to NP5 was Salome. So yeah, that covers my bitchy gaming. I've had a except for the PSO22 part, I've had a relatively good time with what I've been doing, and hope they get that nerf out to Havencraft and Forestcraft so I can actually figure out what the meta's going to be like and properly build a deck around it.
And
So
unfortunately, with that, that's pretty much all we've got time for.
yeah, we have some newslets there. Do you have to go right this microsecond? We can try and touch on some of them.
I really need to get organized, moving. So let's have a quick flick through and see what we can touch on. I don't think there's anything there that's particularly good this week. It's a fairly blah week for the games industry as well.
We could do a do announcement thing. There was speculation on it. There was speculation on this when the Trails announcements were made. I don't remember if we talked about them, but we got English release dates for 4 new Trails games in the West. 2 of them were the ones that we were missing from the mainline series, called Trails from Zero and Trails to Azure.
Yep.
And that's the Crossbell duology, which everybody praises as being the best ones. And the fan translation just finished at the middle of this year, or earlier this year. I think it was around April-ish for the second game. And so it was done. Well, after that happened, and they got a lot of buzz from it, they apparently were contacted by NIS America and offered to just come down, and they just basically said, we're going to bring this team on, and they're going to help us do an official localization, and you've got Trails from Azure coming out in 2020...
That was next year.
Yeah,
2021.
Honestly,
no,
I
2022.
I hope it goes well, because it would be a really good proof case for, well, we can get the fans on board and make a lot of money out of doing so.
Yeah.
As opposed to the usual Nintendo strategy, which is to send the lawyers around with big sticks.
Yeah.
And these were notable because they did all of the work to fix the UI and stuff and include a turbo mode.
Yeah.
So basically the standard package that would have been done by...
If it was done by a proper company. So they fixed the UI, they fixed the interface to fit English text. They added a turbo mode function that was not in the original games and playtested the ever-living crap out of it. And so they've been brought on as part of the team to do the official localizations, and that means unfortunately, the patches for this are now gone. So you can no longer download the fan patches. They have been disappeared from their website.
If you are actually a fan of the game, this is sort of what you want.
Yeah, you want to support this.
You want to, number one, support the localization of the franchise so you don't have to jump through hoops to get it. And number two, you want people involved in that process who obviously must love the game.
Yeah, people that are willing to put that much work into a game to localize it. They've got to really love the product. There are likely going to be quite a few changes from the original thing, which is going to be okay. I heard the original one could get a little memey sometimes with Tio, especially. Tio's your savvy tech character, and they made her talk in Latica speak.
She's a meme lord.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they translated her rather subtle meme references in Japan to very blatant ones in English.
That's the way those things use.
And they also crowdsourced the jokes you get when you inspect an empty chest. It'll all the games.
Oh no.
They'll say something funny about being an empty chest, or they'll just be a cry for help from the localization team that they're going insane from having to go through so much text as in the official localizations. So they crowdsourced all the jokes from that. I don't know what they are. But those are probably all going to be taken out because of legal liability issues if somebody claims their joke was used and they didn't get compensated. So yeah, it's interesting. The only other two projects that come to mind that did something similar are G Senju no Mao and the Umineko games. And the Mao team was just brought on whole cloth like this was. They just brought the whole team on to use their translation and do their own edits to it. And I think the Umineko team didn't request the fan translators' help. They just stole the translation and sold it.
Oh no.
So
savory.
So I mean, they had the license, and there was nothing in the Witch Hunt Project's website that said you couldn't do that. I guess
they didn't cover their own legal bases.
Yeah. So not real easy to defend the fan translation in court either.
Well,
Nah, if you own the license and you just use somebody else's translation, all you can say is, well, all it is a translation. It's exactly what it says. The judge ain't gonna know the difference.
Yeah. Sounds like there should be something else in there as well, but I don't know enough about it to.
Yeah. So yeah, more stuff like this will I'm always a fan of, as long as it turns out okay. So especially if this turns out okay, even if you got the fan patches, support this. We want people to do more of this.
Also, we need more fresh faces in the translation industry.
Well, yeah, right now we have Exceed, and they're the only people that care enough to take the time it takes to properly translate and localize a game.
Yes.
But they take forever to do so.
Yes.
And then there's all those people who basically just write their own script.
Yeah, don't do that unless you're doing Samurai Pizza Cats.
I see people in their industry like really stridently defend it as the right way to do it. It's like, we're trying to localize it, we're not trying to translate it. It would be terrible if we just translated it because it wouldn't make sense culturally. The thing is that we don't want a Japanese game to be converted to Western culture.
Yeah.
Like, whoever asked for that?
Yeah.
Yeah, your argument holds up only to a point.
It doesn't hold up really if they're changing any sentences at all. I will let them rearrange sentences in a paragraph, and that's as far as I'll let them go usually.
Puns and wordplay is about where I draw. Because a lot of that doesn't work when you translate it.
Yeah, because they are allowed to change the ordering of the sentences in a paragraph and the words in a sentence, and that's as much leeway as I'm willing to give them.
As long as it still means the same thing.
No, you can't necessarily leave it at that. I think that they should use an extremely light touch, because what something means is always up to the viewer's discretion, and that includes people who are doing localizations. Like, there are some major localization gaps in FGO. The fact that the Shimosa chapter in Epic of Remnant was supposed to be a prototype for the Lost Belts, that nuance is completely gone because the translator didn't understand what the characters were talking about, having not really following the story going forward after that point when it was being translated to English, and so just inferred what they thought it meant and then inserted some blather to that effect.
Yeah, it was like it was translated in real time.
If it was translated directly, it would have made zero sense at the time, but the fact that it was a prototype Lost Belt would have become evident when that topic is brought up later. So they screwed it up because they assumed that they understood and could just replace the text with something that they thought was appropriate.
Putting too much of themselves in it, which is more than zero.
As far as I'm concerned, if you can tell any characteristics of the person who did the localization job by the way they localize something, then they're not doing their job correctly. Yeah. What should come through is the original directorial intent, not the intent of the localizing team.
Yes.
So yeah, that was just a quick little newslet. I wanted to cram at least one news topic in.
Yeah, so you got Tales games to look forward. There's a couple of rants that we could go on, but for a couple of the other topics, but.
Oh yeah, we could keep the localization going proper too, but you got to get out of here.
I got to get going.
All right, folks. I think that's going to be the show. Email topic of the week. What have you been doing? We haven't heard from anybody except Serathus, and Serathus can send us what he's doing too.
What you doing?
We'll talk about anything. And yeah, closing comments go, and let's get out of here.
I don't want to adult anymore.
I don't want to level up my Cs anymore.
Yep.
Oh yeah, the Cs. They are pain.
Yep. I want to play more Shadowverse and probably go hunt some monsters a little bit.
So yes.
So, alrighty. We'll see you next week, hopefully with not an abridged show. If Fern, try to let us know a little bit ahead of time if you can. If you know you're going to be gone, and we can.
Everything's up in the air at the moment. I'm making up as I go along.
I know. Just put it in your head. If you get the opportunity to let us know ahead, if we can attempt to schedule around it.
Yup.
All right. So we will let you guys go and see you next week. Sayonara. Bye bye.